Hey, Robbie Falk here. Talking Dogs is live on your screen, whether that be a computer, tablet, phone. Some people watch this on their on television. I appreciate you wherever you are watching this. Much appreciated you guys for following this show, for following our work at Maroon and White Daily, and all that jazz. I appreciate you guys for being here. Special Egg Bowl edition of this, as Mississippi State and Ole Miss get set for another installment of this wild and crazy rivalry. I've seen some crazy games over the years between these two teams, and I don't know if this year is going to be the year that we see something crazy. This is a pretty wide gap between these two teams. I don't know if I've seen as wide a gap in quite some time from a talent perspective, experience, coaching perspective as far as the experience is concerned. It's a very wide gap between State and Ole Miss coming in this game. So, I'm not expecting anything crazy, but you just never know. We've seen, the wind blow out a field goal attempt for the win for Mississippi State before. We've seen, a last minute interception turn into a game winning field goal. We've seen a guy running into the end zone with a chance to tie or take the lead, fumbling it away. We've seen one guy crawling to a pylon and pretending to pee on it like a dog, essentially costing Ole Miss the ball game and a head coaching change as well. So this thing's been crazy. This rivalry has been crazy. That most of what I just said has just happened in the last 10 years, with the exception of the immaculate deflection that happened in the 80s when Mississippi State was in Veterans Memorial Stadium in Jackson and had a field goal go through the uprights and get blown out of the uprights. Even God has intervened in this rivalry. I don't expect that to happen this year, but you never say never when State and Ole Miss are involved. So Ole Miss comes in this game 8-3, 4-3, I think, in SEC play. The Bulldogs are 2-9 and 0-7 in SEC play. State is trying to avoid its first winless season in SEC play since 2002, and I remember that season very well. Had season tickets for that team, and it was a nightmare. But Ole Miss, on the other hand, they're still technically alive. I think in the college football playoff. I don't think it's totally done for them, but it's kind of bleak. They're going to have some more chaos happen this week. 4 losses would really do them in. So they're trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be tough for them with the 3 losses, but it just kind of depends. I'm interested to see what the playoff rankings look like, and where they come in there. And that when those playoff rankings come in, you'll really have a good idea of what needs to happen for teams like Ole Miss and Alabama to get in with their 3 losses. And then you got Texas A&M. What happens if Texas A&M wins this week against Texas and they go to the SEC championship game? They're certainly in the mix for the college football playoff. Can South Carolina sneak in with a win and 3 losses? I don't think so, but you don't know. I think if anything, this has watered down the SEC a little bit, and it has a chance to knock out a couple of SEC teams. When it looked like the SEC was going to get maybe 5 teams in, now you might have another opportunity for an ACC team, perhaps a Big Ten team. The Big 12 still has a team or 2 up for it. It's just going to be wild. A lot of people have talked about this college football playoff and the 12-team expansion going out from 4 teams. They talked about it like it's there's not 12 teams that can win a national championship. They don't need to be 12 teams in a playoff. If you look at the NCAA tournament in basketball, I don't expect 60 plus teams to be able to truly compete for the national championship. I'm sure there will be some chaos in those first, the first weekend going into the second weekend. There will be some chaos. Very rarely do you see more than maybe 10 teams that you feel like can truly win that thing. But the greatest thing about March Madness to me is the fact that those first couple of weekends, there's going to be some chaos happening. There's going to be some crazy ball games. That's what I want to watch the playoffs for. I don't want to watch the playoffs and just see four teams get in. And a lot of times it's Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, teams like that. You usually see at least two of those same teams, and that means just only two other teams really have an opportunity to get in year by year. I like the opportunity for other teams to have a great season, get into a playoff, host a playoff game. You're in the first week, you're playing at someone else's home stadium. Can you imagine a whiteout at Penn State for an opportunity to advance in the playoffs? Can you imagine at Neyland Stadium hosting a playoff game with a chance to move on? Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, these are going to be great atmospheres, and it's done the exact opposite of what people thought it would do when they said it would diminish regular season games. It is not. It's made regular season games even more important. Ole Miss goes to Florida, taking on a 5-5 Florida team, and lose the ball game, and essentially that could eliminate Ole Miss from the playoffs. Alabama goes out there and they lose at Vanderbilt. Whoever thought that would happen? And they've lost two other ball games. They lost at Tennessee. So this is, to me, it's made football the product. At least on the surface level, when you just look at the wins and losses, it's made it more intriguing that teams can lose. An Ole Miss team can lose to a 5-5 Florida team, and stuff like that. So, the product, from my view, has gotten watered down a little bit. I don't think it's as clean as it has been for a lot of these teams. Even some of the best teams are playing just ugly football. And I think you see that when you change these rosters and you're constantly bringing in new players. It's just a different style now, and that part of it's not great. But from the surface level, the fact that no one is going to be undefeated going into this thing, that's intriguing to me. Everybody has a loss, and we're talking about maybe three lost teams getting in. That gives teams, to me, that gives teams hope. Like, going forward, you can afford to have a loss or two. You could even afford to have three losses for some of these teams. So I like this. I love this format of having more than four teams. I don't know if 8 is the right number, if 12 is the right number, but I like this. So anyway, moving on to the game coming up this week, Friday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. They've moved it from Thursday to Friday. I personally love it. I get a chance to have Thanksgiving all day and not have to deal with the ball game. But it's a game that on paper, it's a blowout for Mississippi State. You look at it on paper and it says, Ole Miss 49, Mississippi State 20 at, tops. It could get ugly, but you don't play games on paper. You still got to go out there and play. And Mississippi State has been in games like this where they were not favored, and they've come out with blowout wins. Ole Miss has been in games where they were not favored, and they've come out with wins. Things have gone both ways before. When people thought things were going to go one way, they went the other. So you just never know. It's if I'm a Mississippi State fan, I have very little hope going in this game, but there is a glimmer of hope. There always is. You can say there's not, but there's always this. What if this happens? There's always going to be in your mind, in the back of your mind, a chance, and that's why you watch it. That's why you watch these games. That's why you stick with your team. Because at the end of the day, you always in the back of your mind say, what if this happens? But having said that, the odds are very low for Mississippi State on Friday. So it's going to be tough. This is an Ole Miss team that, they've lost 3 games, and they played pretty poorly in all 3. Not for the entire game, but they've, down the stretch, of these games, they've made some major mistakes. And that's what has to happen with this team. It's a very talented Ole Miss team. They have a really seasoned quarterback that I think is very tough. I think that Levy said it best at his press conference today. Jackson Dart, his best attribute, he believes is his toughness, and I think that's what is the best thing about Jackson Dart is, he's going to bring that toughness. He's going to bring that edge. Players rally around that with him. They have issues running the football, and it all derives around Ulysses Bentley, who, Lane Kiffin refuses to put on the field, and he's been pressed on it. He doesn't have a good answer. It's very strange that Bentley's returning kicks, things of that nature. He's not getting any carries. I don't understand it. Um, all I can say is there is no other explanation other than Bentley is in the doghouse for something. It's not that he's not talented. It's not that he's not healthy. He's done something wrong. He's done something that the coaching staff believes is a detriment to the team, or he doesn't deserve carries, whatever. But he's done something. This isn't just him. I refuse to believe that Kiffin is just forgetting about him out there, or they just don't think he's good enough. I refuse to believe that. They're putting walk-ons and moving wide receivers to running back. So something's up there with him, but that's certainly hurt them. If you look at their losses against Kentucky, LSU, and Florida, a big reason I think that they haven't been able to have the flow offensively is they just don't have the run game doing what it has done. Let me see if I can pull up some stats, just kind of compare. Now, in those 3 games, they scored where's Kentucky? They scored 26 against LSU. They scored 17 against Kentucky. They scored 17 against Florida. Now, those are their 3 lowest outputs of the season, I believe. So in those 3 games, the offense has just been kind of disjointed. They've had some good moments and they've had some rough moments, but it's certainly, you look at it, 17 points against Kentucky. They scored 27 against South Carolina, 26 and winning against Oklahoma, 63 against Arkansas, 28 against Georgia. Arkansas is kind of boosting up their stats because otherwise they've had under 30 in every single SEC game. The offense, you look at the total yards on the year, and the numbers have been good and they've been elite, but they don't tell the true tale. They've kind of blown up a lot of lower level teams, and then Arkansas, they had that huge output in that game, but some of these other games haven't been as effective. Thought South Carolina, they played pretty well, and then Georgia, for the most part, after the first half, they played really well in that one too. But Kentucky, they were disjointed. You could look at it in that Kentucky game. Against LSU in the first half, I thought they were pretty good. They missed some opportunities to score. Second half, they really kind of bogged down a little bit. And you look at them in the fourth quarter, they scored 19 points in SEC play this year. Easily the worst output of any other quarter. They scored 45 in the first, 78 in the second, 59 in the third, and 19 in the fourth. They've been outscored 28-19 in the fourth quarter. And then, rushing in SEC play for them, Jackson Dart's their leading rusher, 76 carries for 285. Bentley leads them in SEC play in yards per carry, 34 carries, 151 yards. That's third on the team in SEC play, 4.4 yards per rush. And Henry Parrish, 73 carries for 251, and he's been banged up, and he's only averaging 3.4 in SEC play. The rest of their roster in SEC play is below 100 yards rushing. They've struggled to find that running game this year, and this offense, very similar to Mississippi State's, is predicated on running the football. They need to run the football. And they've hit some huge plays in the passing game. They've had some big time ball games from Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins, and Caden Lee has come up big as well. Um, but it's very difficult to be one dimensional, and it's very difficult to run what they want to do consistently when you look at the tempo, things like that, if you can't pick up chunks in the run game. And that's been hit or miss for them. So let's go game by game here. I just kind of want to compare their losses. So you look at, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Before they get in SEC play, their first 4 games, they have 200 over 200 yards rushing in every game. 243 against Furman, 258 against Middle Tennessee, 272 against Wake Forest, 219 against Georgia Southern. Then you get in SEC play, 92, 140 on 41 carries against South Carolina, 42 carries for 180 against LSU, 31 for 69 against Oklahoma, 42 for 132 against Arkansas, 36 for 134 against Georgia, and then last week 35 for 141. And a lot of those were kind of scrambles by Jackson Dart. So it's just not as efficient as what they want it to be. You look at this Ole Miss team when they've been at their best. I think when you look at the past with Lane Kiffin, I believe they've been at their best when they've been able to just run the football and keep those defenses in the box, close to the line of scrimmage, and you get one-on-one coverage with your wide receivers, and those wide receivers a lot of times are beating their man down the field. And Dart, Matt Corral, those guys have been able to get the ball to them. It makes it, when you get one-dimensional defenses, especially in the back end, that are able to be physical in the line of scrimmage. These defenses that have those physical defensive backs, look at LSU and Kentucky. Florida was really physical. They really made things difficult for Jackson Dart. Plays broke down for him. When you're physical at the defensive back position and they're not able to run the football as well, it really puts you in a bind. Now, we're saying all this, and the offense is they've still been incredibly productive from a yard standpoint. I mean, they still threw for over 300 against Florida. They had, almost 500 yards of offense. It's not really, this offense, even Jeff Lebby's offense, most of the time, it's not really about the yards that they pick up, in between the lines. It's about the touchdowns and the points they're scoring, because it's been very easy for Lebby and Kiffin over the years to move the football, to get down the field, to get in the red zone. It's when you get in the red zone where the game is played against Ole Miss. And they haven't been as effective in the red zone this year because they haven't been able to run the football as well. They're having to resort to J.J. Pegues and, even Jackson Dart sometimes. They get in those third and short, fourth and short situations inside the red zone, and they're coming up empty, or, they're even having to kick field goals when normally they would be finishing drives with touchdowns last year. So for Mississippi State, that's kind of the thing going into this game. Can you force them to kick field goals? It's going to be very difficult for this team to line up and J.J. Pegues is back there and they get a first down. It's going to be very difficult for this team to stop that. They just don't have the guys up front. So for State, I think it's totally a turnover game for them. They have to get turnovers. They have to force Jackson Dart into turnovers. They have to strip the ball. I don't think that it's going to be easy for this team to get Ole Miss off the field. It's a terrible matchup for this team. It just is. On both sides, it's bad matchup on both sides. It's very similar in some ways, probably to Texas and Georgia. But if you can come away in those games and you lose this game by 10 or you lose this game by 16, 17 points like you did against Texas and Georgia, I think you can be happy with that, but it's just going to be tough. So that's what's coming on Friday. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. This thing's almost over. So you guys can turn your attention to basketball if you haven't already here shortly. All right. So once again, reminder: you can get your questions, comments in that chat box over there, and we'll get rolling. Got a couple of uh, questions or comments about the Class 3A playoff game. That's, by the way, that's where I'm going to be on Friday. We have two area teams playing for the North State Championship in Class 3A. Paul Jones will be at the Egg Bowl, so he'll have coverage from that. But I will be in Ackerman watching Choctaw County in East Webster. And Hunter Johnson has a question on that. Does East Webster beat Choctaw County? Are you taking away Caleb? How does East Webster beat Choctaw County? Are you taking away Caleb in their pass game, or are you going to take away the run game? That's the issue with Choctaw County. If you guys haven't followed Choctaw County this year, a lot of people think it's just a Caleb Cunningham show. They are stacked for a 3A team. They're stacked across the board. They got the offensive and defensive line. Linebackers have played really well. Secondary's been really good. And then on the offensive side, the offensive line's really good. KJ Cork at quarterback has been solid. And you have a great running back in Jeremiah Miller. You have a couple of other receivers to go along with Caleb. So that's the kind of the catch-22 is if you try to take away Caleb and you double team him with some safety help in a corner and you just try to take away that part of the field, they're just going to run the football, or they're going to get the football to the tight end Chanson Mosley or their other wide receivers. It's very difficult to stop this team offensively. You've got to take advantage of mistakes because there will be some lapses. The Choctaw County has shown some lapses every now and then. And if you get that window, if you're East Webster, you have to take advantage. You have to go score. And they didn't do that the first time around, and Choctaw was able to really stack on. East Webster's got to play a near perfect ball game. They have some guys too. I like East Webster's roster as well. It's just going to be the line of scrimmage to me is where it's going to be very difficult. This Choctaw County team, I think they are capable of winning the state championship. We could see Choctaw and Noxubee if the chalk holds. I'm excited about that game. Random Yoda, what Egg Bowl should I watch instead of this one on Friday? Take your pick, man. 99 is a good one. 2007, the second half or the fourth quarter of 2007 is a good one. 09 is good. 13 is really good. 19 is really good. There's some good ones out there. You can watch the end of 19. It wasn't the prettiest game up to that point. But there's some choices. Or you can watch 2016 and watch Mississippi State just absolutely bludgeon Ole Miss with the read option with Aries Williams and Nick Fitzgerald. I still contend if Fitzgerald didn't break his ankle in that 17 Egg Bowl, that Mississippi State would have won that one big. They just could not stop Nick Fitzgerald in his career. That was the only way they could stop him is breaking his ankle in half. He was kryptonite. He was kryptonite to them and Texas A&M. Tom T, when you asked the question about defense and defensive leadership, Levy said he liked the consistency. What consistency? Consistently being the worst in Division One. Yeah, it's kind of tough to say that. I mean, there's been very little that we've seen from the defense that brings any confidence whatsoever. And I don't know how much I can take away from what Levy says at these press conferences. I think really what it is Levy's trying to bring like confidence to the team and be positive, have a positive mindset, and that's fine. That's totally fine. He's been pretty consistent with that. He's very you're gonna give a lot of coach speak answers, and um, like I said, he's gonna be pretty positive. So all that matters is the results of all this, and if the results are that Jeff Lebby makes a change or makes several changes on the defensive side of the ball, that's all that matters. Now, if he comes away in the offseason and he says, everything's fine, and he backs up kind of what he's saying at these press conferences, that they just need different players and um, things like that, then we've got a problem because there's some massive changes needed on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know very many people that are surviving in this league that have produced on their side of the ball, offense or defense, this bad. Mississippi State is in the 120s in almost every single category. By the way, there's only, I think, 132 teams. So they are among the worst 10 defenses in the country in almost every category. And that is unacceptable. If you're making $1 million, you can't afford to have a year like that in the SEC. It can't happen. You don't get second chances for that. Nobody gives anybody second chances for that. So that's the conundrum that you're faced with here if you're Jeff Lebby. Do you think that it's just totally on the players? Do you think that it's just a talent issue? And if that's the case, if you truly believe that, you better bring in a top 25 portal class, top 20 portal class, and it better be heavy on impact players on the defensive side of the ball. You have to overhaul this defense. You have to do that anyway, but you really have to do it if you're deciding to bring back Coleman Hutzler, because I can tell you with 100% certainty that the confidence level of this fan base in this football program, if that happens, is going to be extremely low, and it will reflect in season ticket sales, donations. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next week. MSU Bulldog fan, if we do fire Hutzler, what do you think is the next must needed step to do in order to get better? Like I said, it's the talent. You got to get players in here on the defensive line that can win the line of scrimmage against a lot of teams in the SEC. You got to get guys that can push the offensive line back, that can get pressure on the quarterback, that can stop a run on 3rd and 1. There aren't enough guys up front for Mississippi State right now. There's very few guys up front. I look at that defense, and my first question is, who on this defense could start, especially on the defensive line around the SEC? And there might not be anybody on that defensive line right now that can do that. It is completely devoid of talent. And, that is not totally on this staff. David Turner should bear part of that responsibility because he's the defensive line coach the last 2 years. But at the same time, there just has not been before that. They just didn't. They left the cupboards bare. And then you have injuries. Having 2 injuries to defensive tackles, nose tackles, and Kedrick Bingley Jones and Calvin Dinkins, that hurt. And that's hurt. A couple years in a row. Calvin Dinkins went down too with an injury. They got to stay healthy with their more talented guys, and they weren't healthy. But we didn't expect a whole lot out of Kendrick Bentley Jones anyway. But I think he would have helped this team. MSU Bulldog, thoughts on the 3 new recruits even after losing Saturday? I thought 3 good pickups. They all came from different levels. I like that. They need some balance. There's been a lot of offers to junior college guys, and kind of alarming, some of them. But I think we need to remember some of these junior college guys are not like some of the others. Saquon Miles, that they got a commitment from Hines. That's a guy who I think he had a Georgia offer. Ole Miss was coming after him. A former Troy commit that Mississippi State got on. He likes Mississippi State a lot, has some connections here, and he wanted to be a Bulldog, and he can come in and compete for a starting spot next year. So I like that pickup. I like the kid from Kennesaw State, defensive back. That's going to be a big position of need is defensive backfield. And he should come in and compete for a starting spot alongside Bryce Pollock and Kelly Jones, possibly. Although I've felt about Kelly Jones since he was in high school that he is a safety, and I think that's his best spot. I think Stonka Burnside should be at safety too. So that you need cornerbacks, you need cornerback depth. They don't have depth right now. Adam Alsop says he's going to be watching the dentist on Friday instead of Hutzler. I can't blame you if you want to have some happiness in your life. Basketball is the best chance. Coy Van percentage on Hutzler staying. I honestly have no clue what's going to happen. I've heard from a lot of people within the program that they believe that he is going to stay, but those same people have said they don't really know also. So that I don't think very many people know. I think the Levy's kind of keeping that tight, and we don't know for sure what's going to happen. But I would say probably 60% that he stays. That's just what I feel right now. Tom T, I was super high on Michael Van Buren, but now I'm not so sure. I know he's a freshman, but I've seen plenty of freshmen make stuff happen. He's been steady and not much else. Yeah, I think it's just, he's hit a freshman wall for sure. I haven't lost a ton of faith in him long term. I still think he has the ability to do some big things, but he certainly has not played great these last few games. Tennessee was unquestionably his worst game, and then this past week just okay. I thought the biggest thing to me is he's not giving you a chance in the first half. He'll show flashes in the second half, but the first half is where he's really struggled to come out and get good starts. He's only had one game this year where he threw over 60% completion percentage. That's got to come up. And then, his last three games have all been under 250 yards passing. His last two under 200 yards. Last week, completed 57% of his passes, 16 and 28, 191 yards, a touchdown. It just hasn't been spectacular in the run game. That needs to evolve. There's a lot of ways for him to get better, but I think at the end of the day, we have to remember this is a first-year, football player that was playing high school football last year. And, he's going to grow, but you definitely want to have somebody in place that's going to be able to contend with him in the offseason. You need somebody that's going to be able to challenge him. He has to be pushed in the offseason. And whether that's Blake Shapen, which I continue to believe is best case scenario, because I just don't have faith that you're going to be able to convince a proven guy out of the portal that has like a year left to come in here and compete with a freshman that started all of this year. But I think you could convince Blake Shapen that he has a very good shot of winning the job, whether he does or not, but which I think he does. But I think you could convince him. I know a lot of people are concerned about his health. Health, I am too, but I still think having a guy that's been in the system for a year that has that experience would be invaluable for Mississippi State, even if he isn't quite healthy or he isn't winning the job. Just having him in the room would be big. Vic Scoville, will Stonka play safety on Friday? I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen him yet. I would be a little bit surprised at this stage of the game. I wouldn't be shocked to see him at safety, though, full-time next year. I think I've been following Stonka since he was in ninth grade, and I've been covering him um, religiously. When he was at Starkville, I was covering junior high, I was covering him in high school. I watched him as a ninth grader lead the team in interceptions, and he was just a difference maker back there. I've always thought that Stonka's future is at safety. I believe that he can play receiver in this league. I believe that he can be successful at that position, but I think his highest ceiling is on the defensive side of the ball, and it's shown in these punt returns. He is a heat-seeking missile on these punt returns. He's got instincts that you just cannot teach, in athleticism, in that hard-hitting nature, very physical guy. I think that Mississippi State would have been helped this year with his play on the defensive side of the ball. And I think it was a mistake for them not putting him there, but I also don't know. I think part of that was his reluctance. I don't think he wanted to play defense. Um, I think they've definitely been having conversations with him about that. It would not shock me in the least to see him at safety next year. James Booth, good to hear Craver's back in the building. Yeah, it's one game suspension for Craver. I don't expect that to linger. Unless he has a screw up this week. I expect him to be back. Garrett Mills, what do you think some of the damage will be to the state program if a blowout win for Ole Miss does happen? I don't think, I think it's expected at this point. I don't think there's going to be anything super negative come from it. I think people kind of know the situation at this point. Atypical. What do you guys think about Mississippi State leaving the SEC to go to the Big 12? That's not happening. Roro, is Rocio Jimenez still rehabbing? Can you ask Sam about her? I'll ask. I haven't heard. She's still trying to get back from her knee injury. I don't know if she's going to help the team this year or not. Storm Chaser 4850. I don't see a major difference in wins next football season with the football schedule is just reversed home and away. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's they can certainly be better, and we don't really know what those teams will look like next year. When are you unpinning the tweet on the top of your X page? I don't know. I don't really pay attention to that. Roro, how did y'all know our first commit would be the cornerback from Kennesaw State? We didn't. Brian was just throwing out a random uh guy. I mean, like we didn't even know that this guy existed. Let's be honest. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, and we had no idea that this person even existed or that Mississippi State was recruiting him, obviously. Brian just said, you really need it to be someone like a big name or somebody that's going to excite the fan base and not some defensive back from Kennesaw State. And here we are. But I think it was a good pickup. Hunter, another East Webster question. Thoughts on East Webster moving to 2A? District's absolutely loaded, and also Choctaw County District's loaded. I think East Webster's chances of competing for state go way up in 2A. It is a solid district, but it's certainly winnable. Choctaw County's district is very loaded. They got Noxubee and Kemper, I believe, and Winona. Corey Van, any players that'll be a surprise transfer? I'm not hearing of anybody right now. Thoughts on going after a quarterback from James in the portal? If they don't keep Blake Shapen, I expect it. I think the priority is going to be to keep Blake Shapen. I think that's certainly going to be the case, and we'll see if he actually does it. But if he chooses to transfer, then I think you need to be looking for someone that can come in here and be a legit threat to win the starting job. You need to challenge Michael Van Buren for that. Roro, wonder what happened to Don Terry Russell. I just think he's in the doghouse. I don't think he's been, they've had some issues with him, from what I've been told, and he just, he's not going to play. I don't know if he transfers after the season or what, but just it's been there's been several issues with him, and he's hurt his chances of playing. They're just not. They're trying to set the foundation. I know a lot of people have said State won't do what it takes and just let some of these players play or whatever. Well, this is a first-year head coach, Jeff Lebby, that's trying to set the foundation and make sure that his players don't run over him. I totally get it. Um, I don't think that these guys, Mario Craver or Dontae Russell or somebody else maybe that's been suspended, I don't think they're changing your win total. They make you a better team. I'm sure they allow you to do some things you can't do, but I don't think it really totally moves the needle beyond the 2 wins right now. So you got to make an example. I mean, you can't let those guys, kind of run the program. MSU Bulldog feel bad for Levy trying to handle with potentially losing fan support, a decision to fire or keep Hutzler, trying to not throw anyone under the bus and scares off losing recruits. Yeah, this is part of the job, man. This is a tough job. It's nice to make millions of dollars, but when you get in that chair and you see how tough it is to compete inside this league, it'll stress you out. Big mix with Camario coming in next year, possibly Shaping coming back. What do you anticipate happens with Parson? Wouldn't shock me if he moves on at this point, unless he just really wants to be here. It's just going to be tough for him to get on the field in this offense. I like that guy a lot. He's been a great teammate. Loves Mississippi State, but it's just tough. He's kind of caught in a rock and a hard place here. Hell State fan, the tip, pick, and kick will always be my favorite battle of the Golden Egg game. That team had some dudes. Yeah, that was a great game to watch, and just an unbelievable ending. I mean, you'll never forget it. Hunter, it's very strange that the national media like Jamie Shaw and Rothstein think OM is way better than the State. I just don't, we've been getting into, back and forth on the site, and Jamie does a great job with college basketball. And, it's not personal, obviously, but I'm just pleading my case on State and Ole Miss basketball. I could totally see Chris Beard making that a top 25 team this year. The issue that I have is the benefit of the doubt that's been given to Ole Miss when Mississippi State had arguably a better transfer portal haul than Ole Miss did. When you had 4 Power 4 transfers that were all, and this isn't even counting, Michael Nwoku. The 4 Power 4 transfers, Kanye Clary, Riley Kugel, RJ Melendez, and Claudel Harris, all 4 of those guys were major contributors and put up good numbers inside the Power 4. Penn State, Boston College, Florida, Georgia, 2 SEC guys joining an SEC roster to go along with arguably, the best freshman or top 5 freshman. I would say Reed Shepherd was awesome last year, so it's hard to really put all that on Josh Hubbard, but he was really good. It was a top 5 freshman nationally, at least in the SEC. He's coming back. He's going to be better. A guy that coaches in the league, and Cam Matthews would say is one of the most versatile, one of the most important players on the floor. He's back too. So you've got those pieces to go along with the players that you added. If we're giving Ole Miss credit for players they've added from the transfer portal, which we did 2 years in a row now, why are we not giving Mississippi State that same credit? And then you pull it back. Well, Chris Jans has been here for 2 years prior to this with rosters that were not as talented, especially on the offensive end, and he went to 2 NCAA tournaments with that roster. and he beat last year 2 top 10 teams. They had 3 top 10 wins, 2 top 10 teams he beat in Auburn and Tennessee, and went to the brink with Kentucky and had some other big games. This guy has actually done it. Chris Beard has done nothing of substance at Ole Miss yet. And this is a great coach. This is one of the better coaches in the country. He's done big things everywhere he's been. So it's reasonable to believe that he will have Ole Miss winning. And I'm not arguing that at all. I'm not arguing that Ole Miss is going to be trash or Ole Miss is not going to make the tournament or anything like that. What I'm arguing with is the fact that people continue to dismiss Mississippi State as an athletic department, as a basketball program, whatever. This happens across the board in multiple sports. And Chris Jans has proven this at Mississippi State with, like I said, a roster that was not built to contend with some of these teams that are putting up 90 points a game, like Tennessee and Auburn, and these teams that have the offensive prowess. He competed with, and he's beaten those teams with rosters that were very limited in what they do offensively. Well, now he's changed that approach. He's brought in offensive talent to go along with what he does on the defensive side of the ball. Why are we giving Chris Beard credit for something that he has not accomplished yet at a place that he just arrived last year, and not Chris Jans, who has already accomplished something at Mississippi State and has bettered his roster from last season when he was an 8 seed? That's the argument that I'm making. And if you want to say Mississippi State's not a top 25 team, that's fine with me too. If you want to wait and see what Mississippi State's got, that's fine. But to rank Ole Miss ahead of Mississippi State is where I'm going to push back and argue. When every advanced metric that we find out there on the internet has Mississippi State ahead of Ole Miss by in some metrics by a large margin. Mississippi State is a better team than Ole Miss on paper. And so my argument is that Ole Miss is where they are in the rankings because of Chris Beard. And again, if that's what you want to do, if you want to say that, then stick with that. But don't tell me that you've seen something from this team at this point that suggests they're better than Mississippi State. When State's beaten 2 Power 4 teams in a row, one of them in a neutral site, one of them on the road, that I think are going to be in postseason this year. Now we're going to find out. The numbers are going to all come out in the wash by the end of the year. But for the sake of arguments, this is where we are right now. But when things start to settle, you will know. You will know if Mississippi State's a top 25 team. You will know if Ole Miss is a top 25 team. My argument is that the merit is not there right now. And I just want Mississippi State to get more respect than they get. I want Mississippi State to get the benefit of the doubt for once. I'm tired of Mississippi State having to prove that they're a top 25 team in basketball. They're going to have to win, more and more games to start the season to get deep into the top 25. Now they entered it today, so that's a plus. But don't try to tell me that you've seen something from Ole Miss at this point when they beat Grambling by 2. And they had to fend off South Alabama. Don't try to convince me that's why you're ranking them where they are. You can't. So, we'll see. Ole Miss is about to play a really tough schedule. If they play BYU, and I think if they win that, they'll play Purdue. So they have all the opportunity in the world this week to prove me wrong. I just don't think that they've proven it to this point. That's my argument. So, anyway, moving on. Vic Scoville, the fall of John Lewis needs to be studied. It is beyond my thought process, like how he has not been able to get on the field and make plays. And when he's been in the game, he just hasn't made plays. There's a 4-star player I thought was, really good coming out of high school, and he hasn't put it together. And this is a guy that Mississippi State sent to SEC Media Days to represent the team. And he just has not been able to get on the field and consistently make plays. It truly is insane. Coy Van, how do you feel about the recruiting class? Will there be a few surprises? Not expecting any, but there always seems to be guys pop up. It's going to come around pretty quick. It's next Wednesday, so that's kind of hard to believe, but it's coming around. Hail State fan from a state away. It seems like the guys love playing for Jans. Is that an accurate assessment? Oh yeah, totally. I think that yeah, they'll play hard for him every ball game. I can't think of a time where, I looked up and I was just like, gosh, they're not playing. They're just not playing hard. They're just giving up. And I'm like, we've seen that before, Mississippi State teams where they just didn't have the effort. That doesn't really exist with Chris Jan's teams. They still play hard, even in games where they're struggling, games that they're going to lose. They play hard, and we've seen that in the last 2 ball games, especially because the first 3 games, there was no challenge. There was no real adversity. State came out, got a lead in those games, and kind of cruised. Utah, they're down by 11 in the first half. They got punched in the mouth in that game. Came back in. I thought early second half was huge for them to claw back into it. And then, the end of the game, the way they were able to just take over the ball game and hit free throws down the stretch and get stops, it was huge. And then the other day against SMU, you're down 13 in the first half. You're able to claw back in that ball game, get it close at halftime, and the second half was just a back and forth affair, and State won in tough fashion again. I think that is all Chris Jans. I think the way that he coaches these players, how hard he is on these players, he makes them want to play for him. He makes them get to a point where they don't want to disappoint him. And I think it's very hard for guys to leave when guys don't want to transfer. Keyshawn Murphy, he tried to transfer twice. He left the team. And here he is. When he came back, he committed 100% to being a better player and bettering himself and stopping the blaming other people for things and being upset at the world and things like that. He has committed to that. And the difference in his game this year is just startling. I mean, he has been incredible through the first 5 games. Like the last 2 especially have just been really good for Keyshawn Murphy. He started in 3 of the 5 games. He came out as a starter in the first game, and I thought he played okay in that first game, but it wasn't what he wanted. Now the last 2 ball games, he's come off the bench, and those have been the best 2 games he's ever played at Mississippi State. 27 minutes against Utah, um, 18 points, 14 rebounds, career highs with both. 30 minutes against SMU, and he ended up fouling out. 16 points, 7 rebounds, 3 block shots. In the last 2 ball games, he has 5 block shots. He has 21 rebounds, and he's scored almost 40 points. He scored over 30 in the last 2 combined. That's coming off the bench. That might be the secret sauce for him. He might be a major spark plug off the bench, and that's been huge. Just the way he's attacked this has been really cool. Hunter Jans needs to settle in a starting 5 because his slow starts are going to bite them in the game down the road. Maybe so. Jans just doesn't really operate under, the assumption that, starting is all that big of a deal. Like who starts, what the lineups are. The way he measures it is who's getting the most minutes and who's playing down the stretch of the ball game. That's the most important. That's how he really gauges his team. So, I don't know if that's all that important as to, who is the guys that's going to be his core group that he really counts on down the stretch. All right, guys, I'm going to cut it there. About an hour deep into this. I appreciate you guys. Subscribe once again if you haven't already. Would love for you to do that, and really appreciate it. Like the video, share it if you want to. Tell your friends, tell your family. I'd appreciate it. tremendously, and I would love to come have you over at Maroon and White Daily. We have a great deal going on right now. Join 50, I think, is the promo code. If you join today, you get $1 the first week. So if you sign up today, the entire week going in the next week will be just $1. And then after that, it's 50% off for the entire year. So come check us out. Recruiting season is about to heat up. Paul Jones is the best in the business. I assist every now and then, but it's mostly Paul doing that work. And he has a ton of articles that have already gone out on the official visitors that we've had this past week. So you're going to want to check that out as well. He's caught up with just about everybody to this point. And then beyond that, we got basketball starting up. And after that, we'll have baseball. So, on top of that, the very best message board out there of Mississippi State fans. We're killing it right now with our community. And I'm seeing new people show up every single day on the message board. I love it. I love new faces over there. I love new members getting engaged with our community that we already have. And we have a great group of fans, knowledgeable. They love Mississippi State. They love Mississippi State basketball too. If you're a Mississippi State basketball fan, that's where you need to be. So, um, other than that, I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for your support. We are thankful for your support at Maroon and White Daily if you do subscribe to us. So, thank you, seriously, from the bottom of my heart for investing your money in us and on here, your time to listen to me talk and listen to me ramble. It truly means the world to me that you guys have invested in Paul Jones and myself if you're a subscriber. And, that obviously it keeps us rolling. It puts food on my table. It obviously fuels me mentally and makes me want to strive to be better at my job. So thank you. Thank you for the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you guys, every single one of you. Thank you so much. You don't have to do that, but I appreciate it. We appreciate it greatly. So I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving with your families. Enjoy time with them. Spend as much time as you possibly can, especially with your parents, your grandparents. I'm down to one grandparent at this stage of the game, and I would do anything to have a Thanksgiving dinner with my papa or my grandma and granddad. So invest in them, invest your time, invest conversation in those people because you're not going to be um, with those people, for a very long time. You only get a short amount of time with them on earth. I implore you to take this week, take this time to spend time with them. So that's my PSA for today. All right, guys, appreciate y'all. Have a great week and try to get through Friday, and we'll move on to what's next. All right, appreciate y'all. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll catch you down the road.